I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer with Let's Talk Kids Health. I'm glad that you decided to join me for today's quick chat. Today I'll be talking about what to do after receiving a diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, for your child. I wanted to share 4 quick tips on how to handle the immediate period after getting a diagnosis. Number 1, I want parents to give themselves permission to feel all the feels. It's not uncommon for parents to feel a lot of different emotions at that time. You might be feeling overwhelmed because now that you have the diagnosis, you need to know what to do next, and it can be really overwhelming. Or perhaps after you got the diagnosis, your red flags went up because it automatically makes you think about, ooh, I don't want to put my child on medication. Or it might make you feel guilty, like maybe you might have ADHD or somebody else in your family might have ADHD. Or you might think, it could be a result of, maybe if I had only done this or that, right? So there's oftentimes some feelings of guilt. Some parents may feel a weight being lifted off their shoulders because they knew something was amiss, and yet now having that diagnosis, they can sort of focus on what to do next. So no matter what you're feeling and what combination of those feelings you have, it's really important to give yourself permission to sort of sit with those emotions and talk about it with your spouse or partner, write them down. That way you can begin to process how you're feeling about the situation. Number 2, talk to your child about the diagnosis. It's really important to engage them in conversation afterwards, especially if they were in the room with you and the pediatrician or the psychologist said, I think your child has ADHD. That oftentimes will lead a child to think, what is that? Did I cause that? Is something wrong with me? They might not know what ADHD is, and they oftentimes aren't feeling empowered enough to ask the question, what is that? And so taking the time to broach the subject with your child can be really helpful to help them process and know that there is nothing that they did to cause it. It just is, and that together you and your child can work towards understanding how to best support them at home and school. For younger kids, I often like to use children's books to open up conversations, and I have a short list of children's books that I especially love in this setting to help parents start that conversation with their child. So make sure to check out my blog post for that list of recommendations. But using a book that you can start to read with your child makes it non-threatening, and then after reading it, your child can then open up and ask questions. They might even see themselves, parts of themselves, in the characters in the book, and that can also help them understand more about what ADHD is or what the process is moving forward. So make sure to have that time set aside to talk to your child. And I do want to encourage you to think about the fact that you're going to probably have to have this conversation at multiple time points. One right after, and then maybe a few days later, and then again as the child gets older and as they're reprocessing that information in a different way and they become more mature, and then they really begin to understand what it is that their challenges are. And then number 3, allow them to ask questions, and please don't feel like you have to have all the answers. That's why we really encourage parents to start building their team of folks who can be around both you and your child to help support you along this journey. So I encourage parents to always follow up any questions that their child has with, that's a great question. Why don't we write it down, and together we can either look at this website that your pediatrician recommended we look at, or we can ask your doctor at the next time that we go. I want to point out that there are websites that you can go to and has a good starting point of understanding of this topic, including healthychildren.org, understood.org. There's also CHAD, which stands for Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or CHADD. And then there's also Attitude Magazine. So those are some really good starting points if you want to get some information from the comfort of your own home. But I also encourage you to write down any of those questions. Make sure to talk with your child's doctor about all your questions, all your concerns, and all the feelings that you and your child have along the journey. It's really important to know that you're not alone. Your child's doctor is there to answer questions, to guide you along the way, and then to help you develop an ADHD care plan. I really encourage you, whatever route you take, it's important to make sure that you engage your child early and often in these conversations so that they can also begin to feel as comfortable about learning about ADHD. You can make it something you do together and learn about together, because you've got to learn to work together along this journey as you develop that care plan with your child's doctor. So consider talking to your child and brainstorming with them who should be on our team as we begin to learn all about ADHD and how to support each other on this road together. Should it be your teacher, your counselor, a tutor, and just run that list with your child so that they start thinking about, like, who should we engage in over time in, and who can your child rely upon for help. Or you can talk about how ADHD is their superpower. It's what makes them unique, and talk with them about what you love about them and that ADHD is just a part of them. And, it's not a big deal, and we're going to learn how to work with it, right? And then lastly, you can consider also looking up famous people who have ADHD. I teach a virtual class called Teach Me ADHD, where at the first class we talk about that. We talk about, all the famous people who have it, and yet we're able to achieve many great things, like astronauts, authors, musicians, actors, actresses, Olympic swimmers, right? It's just amazing to see that kids come away and they're like, wow, that person's just like me too. So, I encourage you, as you think about how to engage your child in that time after you get a diagnosis of ADHD, that not only do you help them process those feelings and all the feelings, the good ones, the not so good ones, the scared ones, the overwhelmed ones, right? But also let them know that there's something positive coming out of it too. And that really, now that we have an answer, we now next need to learn how to work together and have fun along the way. Hope you found that helpful.